Greetings, guzzlers, and welcome back to Buys Beverages, Tuesday night edition. It is early August here. I think today might be the 10th. I've lost track of the days, which is all right. And tonight's beer is one I was not expecting to see ever. And I'll explain why after you hit the like and subscribe button. Now, I was at Publix, I had to go to the pharmacy, pick some stuff up, because that's what you do, at a certain age. And I'm browsing the beer cooler, and I saw something that would be very fitting in March, but it's August, but it doesn't matter. I found Dragon's Milk Imperial IPA. This is a barrel fermented India Pale Ale with creamy notes of vanilla and citrus, 11% alcohol. Now, I've tried other Dragon's Milk. It's one of my favorite beers. Every single one has uniformly been 11% alcohol and uniformly come in a bottle, not a can, which is odd. But man, check that out. Look at that dragon. Whoa, green dragons. I hope it doesn't taste like chlorine gas. Sorry, obscure role-playing game reference. The original green dragons of the 70s and 80s would breathe poison gas. Why? Because the person who created that monster stat studied a lot of history and played a lot of war games. And chlorine gas is what killed a lot of folks during World War I. It's all related. But anyhow, normally, Dragon's Milk makes stouts. They make stout, they make golden stout, they have a delicious red ale, which is kind of almost the color of stout. Whatever, they're all delicious, and I anticipate this Emerald IPA to be delicious as well. Are there any other texts written upon it? No. I'm just gonna crack it open so we shall see what it looks like. And Owen Buys Beverages is not here for this video. He's out visiting with his friends, which is what one does on leave, and it's always a tough call. Do I stay with family? Do I visit friends? Because there's never enough time to do and see everyone you want. But anyhow, let's pour this. Ooh, it's a deep yellow, almost golden. Emerald, nothing. I didn't think it would actually be the color of emerald, although that would have been awesome. But look at that, deep golden. Can you see that? Got the sunlight kind of coming down at an angle behind me, but not in my eyes. That's a lovely copper color. Anyhow, it is creamy. That reminds me of like the golden stout, but you can taste that fruit too. This doesn't have that really much of that hoppy bite that you would expect. I think delicious is the word we're looking for. So, with that in mind, I'm going to rate it now because, between between seeing it and buying it and bringing it home, I had a lot of thought about dragons. So, we're going to do some dragon-themed reading in a moment, but for those who don't care for books, because words are scary, I'm going to say 10 out of 10. You really need to go out and buy this beer. I bought this at Publix in Saraland. I hope you can find it near you. Now, though, we're going to drink it in a more fitting mug. I got this for Christmas one year. This is a horn mug. I don't use it very often because 1, it's very large. 2, it's opaque. And 3, I think it may leak a little bit. Oh well. Now, that's an inadequate amount. We should put a second one in there, fill up the mug, right? Because that's what one does with a giant mug, a frothing mug of ale. So, I will keep talking. Now, you may not know it or realize it, but I was an English teacher in a prior life. Oh, you can kind of see it filling up. Lovely. And the favorite thing that I would teach was Beowulf. It was English 12. We did British literature for some reason here in Alabama. And I enjoyed teaching Beowulf, and I'll get back to that in a moment. But my favorite Beowulf teaching story is I was trying to enlighten my class. I was like, class, listen to this recording of someone reading part of Beowulf in the original Old English. So I started, and they all oohed and awed appropriately because, you know, they put up with my eccentricities. And then suddenly my door opened, and standing at the door was probably one of my favorite substitute teachers. He was always somewhere in the building because there's never enough subs. And this is Mr. Cannon Buys Beverages, and I don't recall his first name. And in his case, you know, may he rest in peace. But he opens my door and steps in, and he just starts reciting a large swath of the original Beowulf. You know, oft shield schiffing. I don't remember it all, but he ran through probably the first 2 or 3 pages worth, and he had it all memorized. And all of us were suitably awed. So this is for you, Mr. Cannon. If any of my fellow former teachers are watching this, please comment his name or text it to me. Now, keep the ideas of, well, you know, let's start with Beowulf here. I've got several notes here in this Beowulf. This is the New Verse Translation by Seamus Haney. And it's really cool because it's got Old English on one page, and then the facing page is in like a readable English, you know. Otherwise, I would be here doing, you know, this whole number. Oh my, where does it even start? Gracious. Oh, right here, yeah. Huit, Vegardenia, Engerdegum, Thed Kinga, Grim Gefrunen, Huatha, Ethelingus, Ellen Fremenden. Wait, Ethelingus? Did anybody watching ever pay close attention to some of the things said and uttered in the movie version of The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit? Well, that's because the author of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien, he would teach Anglo-Saxon literature. He studied it, he read it, and there's a lot of comparisons. But anyhow, since we're talking about dragons, let's open up to my first page, my first description. Because here's the thing with dragons. They have been in English myth for a long, long time. And this tends to be how the dragons are found. And this is part of the third part of Beowulf here. Then an old harrower of the dark happened to find the hoard open, and burning one who hunts out barrows, the slick-skinned dragon threatening the night sky with streamers of fire. People on the farms are in dread of him. He is driven to hunt out hoards underground, to guard heathen gold through age-long vigils, though to little avail. For 3 centuries, this scourge of the people had stood guard on that stoutly protected underground treasury, until the intruder unleashed his fury. He hurried to his lord with the gold-plated cup and made his plea to be reinstated. And then the vault was rifled, the ring hoard robbed, and the wretched man had his request granted. His master gazed on that find from the past for the first time. And when the dragon awoke, trouble flared again. He rippled down the rock, writhing with anger when he saw the footprints of the prowler who had stolen too close to his dreaming head. So may a man not marked by fate easily escape exile and woe by the grace of God. A human thief snuck into a dragon's hoard and stole a cup. You may remember this from The Hobbit, but originally happened in Beowulf. And then when the dragon awoke, fear, fire, foes, he was not happy. Because look, as I would teach my class, as the smart ones watching know, a dragon is a metaphor for greed. The ridiculous levels of greed that say like, hey, I'm almost a trillionaire. I could easily end, or at least greatly reduce, hunger and sickness and homelessness. But instead, I hoard it for no good reason. See, dragons do exist, folks. They're just look like people. Anyhow, more on the dragons. Let's see. Now, we often think that, that dragons, are often just, big lizards that sometimes act like capricious cats, toying with the hunt here. All right. The dragon began to belch out flames and burn bright homesteads. There was a hot glow that scared everyone, for the vile sky winger would leave nothing alive in his wake. Everywhere the havoc he wrought was in evidence. Far and near, the Giat nation bore the brunt of his brutal assaults and virulent hate. Then back to the horde he would dart before daybreak to hide in his den. He had swinged the land, swathed it in flame, in fire and burning, and now he felt secure in the vaults of his barrow, but his trust was unavailing. All right, golden cup, small thing in the scheme of things. Taken, stolen, and yet he is just on a rampage to get back what he didn't even ever use. Now, of course, Beowulf being a good king, because here's the definition of a good leader, folks: you do stuff for your people. And in Beowulf's case, spoiler alert, he goes out to kill the dragon, and there's long speeches where he's like, yeah, this is probably not going to work out well for me. And he was right. He, with the help of only one of his men, Wiglaf, as I recall, slew the dragon. The dragon is slain, but in the process, so was Beowulf. So here's the last selection from Beowulf I'll be reading to you, as the people and the men who ran away instead of helping come up. But what they saw first was far stranger. The serpent on the ground, gruesome and vile, lying facing him. The fire dragon was scarcely burnt, scorched all colors. From head to tail, his entire length was 50 feet. He had shimmered forth on the night air once, then winged back down to his den. But death owned him now. He would never enter his earth gallery again. Beside him stood pitchers and piled up dishes, silent flagons, precious swords, eaten through with rust, ranged as they had been while they waited their 1,000 winters underground. That huge cache, gold inherited from an ancient race, was under a spell, which meant no one was ever permitted to enter the ring hall unless God himself, mankind's keeper, true king of triumphs, allowed some person pleasing to him, and in his eye worthy, to open the hoard. All right. And I was trying to catch, the alliteration and the rhythms of a good bit of this type of poetry. All right. That's Beowulf. Dragons are a thing. They've been a thing forever. You know what else has been a thing? These note cards that I'm using. It looks like at one point I used them as a random rumor table for a role-playing game. And here's my favorite random rumor for you folks. Some things shun the light as much as we shun the darkness. Oh, we can go metaphorical again. I'm sure in that game it meant like real monsters. But metaphorically, the light is the truth, and people fear it because, oh, the truth is bad, because it makes people realize what a jerk you are. Just like greed is bad. All you do is destroy and hoard, and then in the end you die. And everyone's like, wow, we can't even mess with this stuff because we don't want to be like that guy. So don't be greedy dragons hoarding all your wealth. Now, is there anything left in these cans? I really want to keep filling it. I've got 2 cans left, but I got to save one, at least, for Owen Buys Beverages. Now, though, The Hobbit. For those of you watching who play my favorite collectible card game, Magic the Gathering, you know that The Hobbit set the pre-releases all this week. Many, many events. Many people spending lots of money for painted cardboard. And by all accounts, while some of the cards are neat and flavorful, everything is way overpriced, and a lot of it is draft chaff. You use it once at the pre-release, and you throw it in a box and regret spending money on it. What you won't regret spending money on is a copy of The Hobbit. Now this is an annotated copy, and this is really cool because it's got notes from earlier versions, it's got Tolkien's original drawings, it has illustrations from other publications where it's been translated into, Hungarian and German and Japanese. I don't know. This is annotated by Douglas A. Anderson. And look, as my mother Buys Beverages can tell you, this was my first favorite book, because apparently I spent a lot of my youth, my little guy youth, like knee-high to a grasshopper youth, telling her all about the hobbits and their little furry feet, and in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a dry, dirty hole or a wet, nasty hole full of worms, but a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. Now, if you've not watched the movies, which they turned this into a trilogy by adding in large portions of the Silmarillion, a giant book also written by Tolkien. All right. Bilbo Baggins, the titular hobbit, is hired by a group of dwarves to go take a hoard back from a dragon, the dragon head, taking it from the dwarves and also from some men at Lake Town. So here's a selection from the very beginning, when the dwarves have shown up, an unexpected party, and they are dining at Bilbo's hobbit hole, his lovely hobbit hole at Bag End, and they're singing. And some of the verses here, the dwarves are like, far over misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away at break of day, to seek the pale enchanted gold. Skipping ahead, while they talk about the treasures, the beautiful, beautiful treasures the dwarves made. The pines were roaring on the height, the winds were moaning in the night, the fire was red, its flaming spread, the trees like torches blazed with light. The bells were ringing in the dale, and men looked up with faces pale. The dragon's ire, more fierce than fire, laid low the towers and houses frail. The mountain smoked beneath the moon, the dwarves they heard the tramp of doom. They fled their hall to dying fall, beneath his feet, beneath the moon. All right, so that's the history. Why we got to go get this dragon? Because he took the dwarves' stuff, and the dwarves, the surviving dwarves, Thorin Oakenshield and company, want it back. Well, later on, they get to Erebor, Lonely Mountain, Erebor being the proper name. Because a sidebar about Tolkien and his world of Middle-earth is that basically he created a language and he built a world and its history around it, and then he dropped his stories into it, which makes for fascinating, interconnected stories with a feeling of history that a lot of other authors try for and fail miserably. All right, so here we go. Bilbo has snuck in and he's looking at Smaug for the first time. And, excuse me, the descriptions here are much better than what you get in Beowulf. There he lay, a vast red golden dragon, fast asleep. A thrumming came from his jaws and nostrils and wisps of smoke, but his fires were low in slumber. Beneath him, under all his limbs and his huge coiled tail, and about him on all sides, stretching away across the unseen floors, lay countless piles of precious things. Gold wrought and unwrought, gems and jewels and silver red-stained in the ruddy light. Smaug lay with wings folded like an immeasurable bat, turned partly on one side, so that the hobbit could see his underparts and his long pale belly crusted with gems and fragments of gold from his long lying on his costly bed. Behind him, where the walls were nearest, could dimly be seen coats of mail, helms and axes, swords and spears hanging. And there in rows stood great jars and vessels filled with a wealth that could not be guessed. The movie does it justice. If you're like me, of a certain age, and you grew up watching the Rankin Bass production, 1977, of The Hobbit, oh my goodness, that does it justice. And that's personally why I think dragons act like cats, because the Smaug in there is very cat-like in its movements and stuff, despite being mostly reptilian with scales and a little bit of fur. Anyhow, There's going to be some lovely, lovely links in the description down below once I'm done. Anyhow, so let's jump ahead. What did Bilbo do? Why, Bilbo's looking at a sleeping dragon surrounded by great treasures. And he sneaks in, and he grasped a great two-handed cup, as heavy as he could carry, and cast one fearful eye upwards. Smaug stirred a wing, opened a claw. The rumble of his snoring changed its note. And then Bilbo fled, but the dragon did not wake. So, what does Bilbo steal as proof that he did his job, fulfilled the contract? He stole a cup. What did the thief in Beowulf steal? A cup. And we know what happens in Beowulf. So if you have never encountered the Hobbit, you can guess what's fixing to happen. The dwarves were still passing the cup from hand to hand and talking delightedly of the recovery of the treasure when suddenly a vast rumbling woke in the mountain underneath, as if it were an old volcano that had made up its mind to start eruptions once again. The door behind them was pulled nearly to and blocked from closing with a stone. But up the long tunnel came the dreadful echoes from far down in the depths of a bellowing and a trampling that made the ground beneath them tremble. Then the dwarves forgot their joy and their confident boasts of a moment before and cowered down in fright. Smaug was still to be reckoned with. Because, folks, and this is sage advice even today, even though dragons are more metaphorical than, giant flying burning lizards, it does not do to leave a live dragon out of your calculations if you live near him. And again, dragons may not have much real use for all their wealth, but they know it to an ounce as a rule, especially after long possession, and Smaug was no exception. The dragon awakes, and frankly, Smaug is pissed, and we're going to figure out why. This is all called the Desolation of Smaug, where he lives. And for those who care, I'm in the chapter Inside Information. Now, eventually, Bilbo is convinced to go back in, and he slips on his ring, his magic ring of invisibility, which we learn in The Lord of the Rings, is the one ring of power, one ring to rule them all, and then the darkness bind them. But he's got it, and among other things, it makes him invisible. So he slips on down, and he sees Smaug, and he thinks he's asleep. But Smaug is just laying there watching the entrance, because dragons have inhuman perception, and he could smell something in the air, but having never eaten a hobbit, the dragon didn't know what it was. It was just something. So he watched, and then it says, oh, another bookmark, joy. A red beam shoots out at the entrance, and Bilbo's terrified, but he realizes the dragon can't see him. Oh, this is a fine beer. Excellent for all the talking. All right. Yes. He was just about to step out onto the floor when he caught a sudden thin and piercing ray of red from under the drooping lid of Smaug's left eye. He was only pretending to sleep. Now, in the Rankin Bass cartoon, it's like flashlight beams shine down, looking for Bilbo, looking for the thief. And I got to tell you, having game mastered a few games involving dragons, if you want to terrify your players, have the dragon do that and say, yeah, folks, your invisibility doesn't work. And, whatever other hiding techniques and equipment they're using just fails. Utter terror at the table, because dragons are not to be trifled with. Anyhow, and then Smaug speaks, and it's almost word for word in the Rankin Bass, and I haven't watched the cartoon enough to know if it's word for word there. Well, thief, I smell you and I feel your air. I hear your breath. Come along, help yourself again. There is plenty and to spare. I don't know why he sounds kind of like John Wayne, but he does. But Bilbo's not dumb, and he says, no, thank you, O Smaug the Tremendous. I did not come for presents. I only wish to have a look at you and see if you were truly as great as tales say. I did not believe them. Do you now? Said the dragon, somewhat flattered, even though he didn't believe a word of it. Truly, songs and tales fall utterly short of the reality. O Smog, the chiefest and greatest of calamities, replied Bilbo. You have nice manners for a thief and a liar, said the dragon. You seem familiar with my name, but I don't seem to remember smelling you before. Who are you, and where do you come from, may I ask? Everybody likes a polite villain. What, you may indeed. I come from under the hill, and under the hills and over the hills my paths have led. And through the air I am he that walks unseen. So I can well believe, said Smog. But that is hardly your usual name. I am the clue finder, the web cutter, the stinging fly. I was chosen for the lucky number. Lovely titles, but lucky numbers don't always come off. I am he that buries his friends alive and drowns them and draws them alive again from the water. I came from the end of a bag, but no bag went over me. These don't sound so credible. I am the friend of bears and the guest of eagles. I am ring winner and luck weaver. I am barrel rider, went on Bilbo, beginning to be pleased with all of his riddling. That's better, said Smog, but don't let your imagination run away with you. And here we get a helpful note from dear Mr. Tolkien. Because this, of course, is the way to talk to dragons. If you don't want to reveal your proper name, which is wise, and you don't want to infuriate them by a flat refusal, which is also very wise. No dragon can resist the fascination of riddling talk and of wasting time trying to understand it. All right, so there you go. You know, watch your back, conserve your ammo, and never ever cut a deal with the dragon. Isn't that the advice that the game Shadowrun recommends? And then, of course, Dunkelzahn rises up and purchases all of Krupp Armory with his old golden hoard, and from there runs for president of the United States in the year 2030. But that's a way, way different story. But anyhow, Smog and Bilbo go back and forth riddling and talking and speaking with lovely description from J.R.R. Tolkien. And then, you know, Bilbo realizes I might be kind of safe. And he starts asking because he wants to find a weakness. Because no treasure if there's a live dragon. No life if there's a live dragon. Metaphorically and, you know, in realism. I have always understood, said Bilbo, that dragons were softer, you know, underneath, especially in the regions of the chest. But doubtless one so fortified has thought of that. And the dragon stopped boasting. Oh, I missed the boasts. I need to go back to the boasts. Because Smog asked, why are you here? I'm not here to steal, said Bilbo. I'm here for revenge. Everybody's cheering want revenge. And the dragon replies, revenge? The king under the mountain is dead, and where are his kin that dare seek revenge? Girion, lord of Dale, is dead, and I have eaten his people like a wolf among sheep. And where are his sons' that dare approach me? I kill where I wish, and none dare resist. I laid low the warriors of old, and their like is not in the world today. Then I was but young and tender. Now I am old and strong. 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 Thief in the shadows. My armor is like tenfold shields. My teeth are swords, my claws spears, the shock of my tail a thunderbolt, my wings a hurricane, and my breath death. That's a huge boast, and I wanted to share it. I'm glad I remembered. It's really good beer, but it makes ADHD brain forget things. All right. Then Bilbo gets him to basically roll over. Show me your underside. If you own dogs, you know that means the dog's like, hey, I'm saying that you're alpha. But whatever. The dragon rolls over. As the dragon says, your information is antiquated. I am armored above and below with iron scales and hard gems. No blade can pierce me. I might have guessed it, said Bilbo. Truly, there can nowhere be found the equal of Lord Smog, the impenetrable. What magnificence to possess a waistcoat of fine diamonds. Yes, it is rare and wonderful indeed. He did not know that the Hobbit had already caught a glimpse of this peculiar undercoating the last time. And so the dragon rolls over. Look, what do you say to that? Dazzlingly marvelous. Perfect. Flawless. Staggering, exclaimed Bilbo aloud. But what he thought inside his head were these words. Old fool. Why, there was a large patch in the hollow of his left breast, as bare as a snail out of its shell. And at which point, Bilbo slips away after a couple parting words. Excuse me. Narrowly escaping a fate worse than death, which is being cooked alive by a dragon and then eaten, maybe while still alive. Now, spoiler alert, if you've not watched the trilogy, which is really honestly well done, you should watch it if you enjoy movies, if you enjoy fantasy movies and good stories. It's all there. Or read the book, The Hobbit. Either this version or any of the 10,000 other versions. And if you're of an age where you have children in the schools and they are reading The Hobbit, read it with them. Oh, it's so good. Anyhow, all that digression to say is that bare chest, as bare as a snail out of its shell, leads to the downfall of Smog and the start of a whole new chapter, the Battle of Five Armies. But I will let the rest of you, enjoy the night I've already taken up. Wow. 30 minutes of your time, 32 minutes, and then some. So I will raise a glass to you, to Mr. Cannon, to Mr. Tolkien, all of whom buys beverages, and cheers. Cheers.